Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. During his tenure as the Emperor's apprentice, Darth Vader was insanely loyal to his master, even if he didn't always see eye to eye with him. The two had been an inseparable duo since they began their quest for domination, and they were an absolute force to be reckoned with. However, every relationship has its road bumps, and Darth Vader and the Emperor were no different. There have actually been a few times that the two have come to blows, though it is hard to imagine this ever happening. There are a handful of times that Vader struck out against the Emperor, although very few and far from in between. Today, we will be documenting each time that Vader came into direct conflict with his master. First though, according to our analytics, a lot of you guys that watch the channel haven't actually subscribed yet. So if you've been enjoying the Star Wars lore and want to keep up to date with everything Star Wars related, force crush that subscribe button. Now acolytes, let's begin. There were exactly 3 times that Vader would assert himself over that of his master Sidious. The first being right after he had gotten his suit. In Revenge of the Sith, we see the black visage of Darth Vader rise from the operating table. The first thing he asks is if Padme is safe. Palpatine, putting on a performance of condolences, feigns a regretful voice as he eagerly tells his apprentice that he had killed Padme in his anger. With a cry of despair, Vader uses the Force to crush each droid in the room and free himself from the table. This is all we ultimately see in the movie Revenge of the Sith, but in a canon comic that follows the scene, it actually expands upon this moment. Vader's despair turns to rage as he lashes out with the Force against the Emperor, pinning Palpatine against the wall in a Force choke, condemning his master for failing to deliver on the promise he had made him to Anakin, and by saving the life of his wife Padme. The Emperor, as Vader attempted to unsuccessfully strangle him with the Force, responded that in death, Padme had provided Vader a gift. That gift was pain. The Emperor continued by giving Vader a choice to either accept and use this gift or to die. After a moment, Vader replied that he would live. As soon as he released his master, Sidious sent a torrent of Force lightning directly at Vader, tossing him to the ground while mockingly demanding for him to use his lightsaber in order to defend himself. Vader, though, admitted that his lightsaber had been lost at the end of his duel with his former master, Obi-Wan, something that Palpatine knew. Something to throw salt in Vader's wound. As Palpatine continued his barrage, the Emperor angrily shouted that the weapon Vader spoke of was not his, rather it belonged to a Jedi, and Vader was now a Sith. Ceasing his Force lightning-based assault, the Emperor ignited his own red lightsaber and leveled the blade to Vader's throat. He then said that he understood how traumatic the last few days had been for his apprentice, but warned that should Vader ever use the Force against Palpatine again, he would finish what Kenobi could not. The Emperor then deactivated his lightsaber and stated that as friends, he hoped that the two of them would never find themselves in a similar situation ever again. And admittedly, they would not, as this was the only extensive quote-unquote fight the two would ever really have with one another. However, we do have 2 other moments where Vader directly opposed the might of Sidious. The second impasse the two had was taken from the novel Lords of the Sith, which is canon, where in the book, Vader, the Emperor, and a few royal guards had to crash landed on the shuttle on Ryloth, the planet home to the Twi'leks, as a growing resistance had been mounting against the Empire on Ryloth and shot down the landing craft, being one of the first rebellions against the Empire in active canon. Having landed in the forest, the 2 Sith Lords, along with a small company of guards, marched their way through the dense jungle in an attempt to find an Imperial outpost on the planet. Along their journey, the party spotted a young Twi'lek girl wandering about in the forest. The Emperor, wanting to keep their location a secret, goaded the child to come near him, then used his powers in the Force to dominate her mind and force her to walk over. He ignited his lightsaber and brought it down to slay the child, to in shock though, only have his blade stopped by Vader's, mere inches from the hypnotized child's face. With a furious scowl, the Emperor stared into his apprentice's eyes and demanded to know why he had stopped him. The two stood there for a few moments with their blades interlocked, and finally, Vader stated that he surmised that perhaps since the child was wandering about, she could have a village nearby that they could stay at. Surprisingly, to the shock of Vader, the Emperor agreed. Accepting this proposal, the Emperor withdrew his weapon and his anger, while warning Vader that should he ever face whatever consequences come to the course of his actions. Ceasing his mental domination of the young girl, the Emperor appeared to her as a friendly and old man, and prompted her to take them back to her home village. Upon arriving at the village, Lord Sidious introduced himself as Krata and Vader as Erkolik. The two names Vader recognized were the Sith pureblood words for pain and death, which was appropriate for what was to come. During their stay in the village, the Ryloth resistance tracked them down and attempted to ambush the two Sith Lords. Vader and the guards killed all who attacked them, including the resistance leader. And then, Palpatine instructed Vader to slaughter the entire village to leave no witnesses, including the young girl. As Sidious had used the Force in order to survive the ambush, Sidious reminded Vader that these were the consequences of his actions, and Vader did as he was told, leaving no survivors, including the young child. The final time that Vader uses the Force against the Emperor in canon is a bit of an interesting case. Vader had gotten tangled up in an assassination plot against himself as well as Sidious. Vader was eventually summoned by the Emperor for an audience. However, shortly after arriving, he then unexpectedly force-pushed the Emperor off of his chair and hurled the throne out of the window. Vader's reason soon became clear when the throne exploded due to a bomb being placed underneath it. He then berated the remaining 5 royal guards for being incompetent and otherwise conspiring against both the Emperor as well as the Empire as a whole. He then personally executed the 2 guards who failed to kneel in guilt by hurling them out of the window with his use of the Force. He cited his lack of time, and otherwise he would have made them die a slow and a painful death, failing at their only mission in life. We on the channel decided to include this moment because it proves that Vader still perhaps has the potential to face Palpatine, due to him being able to catch the Emperor off guard and hurl him out of his own throne with his use of the Force, something that typically Sidious would have no time defending against, and likely would have easily warded off Vader. But nonetheless, we included this as a 3rd time that Darth Vader raised his hand against Lord Sidious in Star Wars canon. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of these accounts? Do you think that if they ever had a fair fight, that Vader could somehow triumph over his Emperor? Or do you think that there's just no way that he could get the upper hand? Let us know down below, and as always, may the Force be with you, and have a great day.